conference. And today I'm going to present some findings from China's first large-scale time use data on gender patterns and values of unpaid care work in China. And so throughout the world, that a woman bears a major primary responsibility for unpaid work, which include housework and taking care of children, elderly, the sick, and for no explicit work. And unpaid care work is essential to human well-being and also plays a pivotal role in generating and sustaining economic growth. However, unpaid care work disadvantages women in the labor market, deprives of them of time autonomy, and up until very recently, unpaid care work is uncounted in conventional income and labor statistics, and also is largely taken for granted in policy making. And China is no exception in this regard. As we know that during Mao's era, China established a dual earners system with a high women's high labor force participation and smaller gender wage gap. While holding up half the sky in the workplace, Chinese women remained primary caregivers. And China's transition to a market economy and opened up to the outside world put a new pressure on women in playing their dual role as caregivers and income earners. And as a result, post-socialist transition period and shows a steady increase of gender gap in labor force participation and wages. And while how women fare relative to men in the labor market has attracted wider attention, and the tension between paid and unpaid care work remain understudied. So in this paper, we try to fill this gap to take a close look at unpaid care work and using China's first time use data. So we're going to so our document the gender patterns of unpaid care work and estimate monetary values of unpaid care work, and then examine how unpaid care work interacts with paid work and non-work activity. I hope this research shares some light on how much the Chinese women contribute to the national economy and how unpaid work affect women's time autonomy. And and the time use survey is a survey that provides information on people, how people spend their time on a given day. And so time use survey has an advantage over conventional surveys that for analyzing unpaid care work and the interaction between work activities and non-work activities. And in China launched its first large-scale time use survey in 2008. The survey and for this research covers 37,000 men and women aged between 15 and 74 years old, and use a time diary instrument. And the survey collected information on what respondents did over each minutes time interval on a weekday and a weekend day. And the survey also collects background for the diary keepers. And so the survey collected detailed information on 113 three-digit activities. And for the purpose of this paper, we group 9 one-digit activity into 3 categories. One is paid work that include wage employment and self-employment in agriculture and manufacturing and services. Unpaid care work include housework and unpaid care for household members and relatives. And the non-work activity is category number 0, personal care, maintenance include like sleeping and eating and personal hygiene. And the non-work activity also include time spent on study, training, recreation, leisure, and socialization. According to this survey, and in 2008, China still maintains a reasonably high labor force participation. In this age group, 80% of male, 67% of the female participate in the labor market. And as we can see, like for women in the primary age of 20 and 45 years old, the participation rate is still maintained at well above 80%. And most of them work actually full-time, right? And so in terms of the time allocation, we put into perspective with India, Japan, and the US. And in all 4 countries, men spend more time on paid work, women spend more time on unpaid work. And in comparison to their sisters in the other 3 countries, Chinese women spend more time on paid work, less time on unpaid work. So you can see the gap is relatively small. And so in terms of non-work activities, in all 4 countries, we observe this gender gap. Women has less time for non-work activity compared to men, and the gap is larger in China and India compared to Japan and the US. So next, we estimate the monetary value of unpaid care work in China. I use that input-based method, that is, find a price like wages for each dollar, each hour time spent on unpaid work per hour, multiply the total number of time spent on unpaid work, and multiply the population in China in the age between 15 and 74. So this measure obviously underestimate the size of unpaid care work because in the rural area and the girls help their mothers take care of siblings, and also older women older than 74, they're taking care of a spouse, taking care of grandchildren, but I have no data to adjust that. And so I use the opportunity cost method and then replacement cost method, so total 5 methods. I will not get into details to save time. So that comes to the estimation based on the 5 method and give us a range. And unpaid care work in value that range from 7.7 trillion RMB to 9.8 trillion RMB, depends upon method. In the relative terms, that comes from 25% to 32% of the national GDP. So this is slightly lower than the developed country. Usually the ratio is in the range of 40 to 50%. And we also compare with the percentage of final consumption. That's from 52% to 63%. And in terms of tertiary industry, that's 63% to 80%. So it's very sizable actually. And so, based on that, then we can see Chinese women's total contribution to China's national economy. That is, in terms of employment, Chinese women's share is 47%. And in terms of amount of time spent on paid work, that's 42.3%. That is, women spend almost the same number of hours on paid work, and so then they contribute 70% of the time on unpaid care work. So two things put together, women count 52.5% of the total work. And because women earn less money in terms of value, and as you can see, Chinese women contribute, according to my measure, is bring home that's 36% of the income share is earned by women. And in value, that's 2/3 of the unpaid care work value. So total, if you measure in value, that's 46%. So it's fair to say that China's, like Chairman Mao declared Chinese women holding up half of the sky. He actually meant labor paid work. In fact, it's half of the sky of the Chinese economy, I would say. And so actually, it's much less appreciated as the socialist model, full employment, low wages, women's full participation in the labor market, lower China's total labor costs, create a very favorable initial condition for China's economic success and in the global economy. And I also, based on my estimation, if China, the amount of time Chinese women spend on paid work down to the level of Japan, Chinese national GDP will contract by 6 percentage points. If down to the level of India, China's GDP will contract by 8 percentage points. That's just a pure static measure. Yeah. So give you some idea that Chinese women's contribution to the dynamic Chinese economic miracle, but not so much appreciated by the policymaker, at least not enough appreciation. So next I want to say, and unpaid work and Chinese women paid and unpaid work contribute to the national economy so much, then how that double burden, the dual role of women play means to women themselves, their own well-being, their time autonomy. So here we estimate the determination of time allocation and over 3 activities: paid work, unpaid care work, and non-work activity. I try to answer like 2 questions. How does the time use of men and women vary with their demographics and the socio-economic characteristics? And more fundamentally, I want to ask is, do men and women have the same degree of flexibility to trade off one type of activity for another? And for this question, the second one, there are 2 perspectives. Gary Becker, okay, so I have no time, so I just show you the result. I estimate, trust me, the result, the method is sound, and just show you the result. So as you can see, I estimate one for rural sector, one for urban sector, holding other things constant. And then you can see in urban women and have 10 hours per week, right, less for themselves. In the rural sector, and the rural women have 7 hours less for themselves, other things being equal. And then if we look at how the change with the characteristics And then you can see the striking gender pattern. But I don't have time to go to detail. I'll show you another slide just in terms of the non-work activity, right? The non-work activity, what I want to highlight is the last column. You can see it's so pervasive. Whenever and there is a change in paid work, and the woman cannot, just like a man, to reduce their unpaid work. What they want is reduce their time for themselves. And this is very pervasive with all the characteristics, all the age group. You can see here is the gender gap and how between women and men, right? So women do not have a time autonomy. So let me conclude. So basically, my result shows unpaid care work represents a huge contribution to the national well-being, and it values this large range of a quarter to 32% GDP, 55 to 66% of final consumption, 60 to 80% of the tertiary industry, and 2/3 of that value contributed by women. And then the double burden of paid and unpaid care work make a woman more time poor than men. And like I just showed you, other things being equal, rural women have 7 hours fewer for themselves. Urban women have 10.5 hours fewer for themselves. And compared to men, women and encounters more rigid trade-offs between paid work and unpaid care work. Unlike men, 1 hour increase in paid work, they reduce their unpaid work, and women reduce the time for themselves. And so therefore, to make China's new market economy work better for women, public policy must acknowledge the contribution of women and support for workers with family responsibilities. Thank you.